What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be doing a spoiler review for The Flash. So of course, yesterday I did my spoiler-free review where I had my positives, negatives, and I gave it a rating out of 10. We're not going to be doing those same things today. We're just going to be talking about the things I essentially couldn't talk about in that review, which are the things that are spoiler heavy. The first thing I want to talk about, which I feel like is the thing most people are talking about right now, which I'm not really surprised about. I feel like every time a big movie releases and there's any sort of cameo, it's always the thing that's like the #1 attraction for the movie. Oh, you gotta see it for the cameos, you gotta see it for the cameos. Now, I'm okay with cameos personally. I only don't like them when they're kind of used to mask up bad writing. Like, let's say the story just absolutely sucks, but they're just like, okay, this whole project's a travesty, let's just throw in these cameos and hopefully people will love it because they get nostalgia from their childhood, right? This movie doesn't feel like that to me because I still really do like the core story. I think the best elements of the movie are the core story. Well, and of course, Michael Keaton's Batman, which I wouldn't really call a cameo. He was kind of just a full part of the film. Cameos to me are more like a character that appears for a couple seconds or a couple minutes, and that's it. The cameos in this movie did have a purpose, though. Well, there was two different types of cameos here. There were the actual, like, in the flesh cameos, like people that were actually there, and then there was the really strange looking CGI things that they did with flashpoints, and like when he's doing the little bubble thing and you can kind of see what's going on around the outside, or like when the worlds were colliding at that point as well. Those are very different. So let's talk about the actual in the flesh cameos where they're actually there. I wouldn't call Ben Affleck's Batman a cameo because he was there for most of the first act, but Wonder Woman showing up was actually a surprise for me, and I actually did hear a rumor about that beforehand, but I just kind of totally forgot about it. And then I see her appear and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, she's just fun to see. She showed up in, you know, other DC movies sometimes for cameos, and it works for me. I do hope they keep her as Wonder Woman. I'm not sure if they're planning on recasting. I've always liked her as Wonder Woman. I think she plays the part perfectly. I know people always, you know, knock on her like, oh, her acting's trash. I never have seen her acting being bad. Maybe like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue here and there, but I usually don't pin that on the actor or the actress. Sometimes I just pin that on they chose a bad take for that scene, because I'm sure they did multiple takes and they just happened to choose one where it just didn't sound very good. I think the one everyone always talks about is when she says like Kal-El no in Justice League. I mean, it didn't sound the best, but at the same time, it's just one little clip, it's one little take. They probably just took the wrong take. Most of the movie, I think she's perfectly fine. Same with Wonder Woman and the other films as well. So it was cool seeing her in here for a couple seconds. And then of course, Aquaman shows up towards the end, which I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well. But again, he was nice to see him in there. And I almost felt like some of these cameos were there because these characters are intended to return to the DCU even after the reset. And I hope that's the case, because that would make perfect sense as to why they chose Wonder Woman and Aquaman, because they're the two actors that I think should keep their role going into the reset of the DCU. Like, I don't want to see a new Aquaman. I think Jason Momoa does great with it. And same with Wonder Woman. I do not want to see a new one. Now, obviously, I would love to keep Ben Affleck, Batman, as well as Superman for Henry Cavill as well. But if you're going to recast them, whatever. But these ones, at the very least, if they can stay, that'd be cool. And I think that kind of could be a reason as to why they showed up here. I don't know. And then, of course, George Clooney's Bruce Wayne at the end, which that one I also heard a rumor about, but I completely forgot about it and was not expecting it. And then I see him there. I was like, what? Like, that's insane. When he was on the call with him, I could tell it wasn't Ben Affleck. I was like, oh, it's probably Michael Keaton, right? It's going to be, oh, Michael Keaton's still there. But no, it's George Clooney. That surprised me. I thought it was a cool cameo. It was just a couple seconds. But the only problem is a lot of people, at least in my theater, like, didn't even have a reaction to it. So I kind of feel like a lot of people, especially younger people, if you haven't seen Batman and Robin, you wouldn't know. You know what I mean? Like, at least Michael Keaton's Batman, he had 2 movies. Everyone's gonna know who that is. But I mean, George Clooney, I feel like it's very, like, you know, it's only people who have seen Batman and Robin, really, or if they just know who George Clooney is and whether he played Batman or not. So I guess that really depends. But I thought it was cool for the people who obviously have seen Batman and Robin, and he was a great Bruce Wayne, at least in my opinion. I just think the movie sucked that he was in, but he was a good Bruce Wayne. So honestly, like, it was cool to see him back as Bruce Wayne in that position. I love that. And let's talk about the weird cameos. That's what I'm gonna call it, the weird cameos. So Henry Cavill showed up for like a split second in that like Flashpoint time warp thing, and didn't really have much reaction to that. It's not like, you know, it's not like he's actually there. It was just part of that little thing, and it's not really a cameo. It was just there. I don't know. I just thought I should mention it because some people in my theater were like, "Oh, it's Henry Cavill," but I mean, it didn't really matter that much at the end of the day. Let's be real here. But then you had the ones that came with the whole world colliding thing, which you had Christopher Reeve's Superman, which a lot of people were like, you know, not liking the idea of doing that because, of course, Christopher Reeve passed away, and they feel like it's kind of weird to bring back like a passed away actor to the big screen with CGI. And I agree, it is kind of weird, but at the same time, if his family like consented to it and was okay with it, I don't really see the issue with that at that point. It's not like he's in the full movie for the entire 2-hour run as like a full character just as an animated form. No, he's just there for 2 seconds. So I don't see that as some awful, terrible thing. Like, oh, how could they do this? If the family was okay with it, then what's the problem? I'm sure Christopher Reeve would have been fine with that. I mean, you can't assume he would have hated it. I'm sure he wouldn't have given a shit, like, to be honest. So I don't see the issue. It's a little weird, but at the same time, like, it's 2 seconds. It was like 2 seconds, really. And of course, you had Supergirl there as well from the 80s Supergirl movie. Nicolas Cage as Superman was probably the funniest one. I think that everyone got a laugh out of that. And it was a little weird because he looked fully CGI. So like I was questioning like, well, why couldn't they have just gotten Nick Cage to come to the studio and film that? Unless they did, and they just happened to CGI over it a bunch, but it didn't look like he was actually there. It looked fully like a CGI Nicolas Cage. But they actually had a little scene with him there where he took out that little monster thing. I thought that was cool. It was 2 seconds, but again, it was cool. I laughed, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day. You had a couple other things, like mainly classic DC things, like obviously Adam West as Batman was there for like a split second. It was, again, cool to see. Not really much more to it. They're just little cameos. They don't really mean much to the film, but I thought they were kind of nice to see. I will say I'm very glad they kept out Robert Pattinson's Batman as well as Christian Bale's Batman, or also I guess you could add in Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. Like, they didn't have any of those DC projects because to me those projects should stay grounded and realistic. I don't want to see those as a part of a multiverse. You know, the Dark Knight trilogy is not within a multiverse. It's not a universe out there in this universe. It's not. Like, that should stay the course. Same with the Joker movies, same with the new Batman films. I do not want to see multiverse stuff in those ever. And if this movie brought those in through the multiverse, I would have been like, that's kind of dumb. Like, that, I don't want to see that. I saw a lot of people saying, oh, it'd be so cool to see Michael Keaton fighting alongside Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, and Robert Pattinson. Like, I don't want to see that. I'm sorry. I just don't. Like, there's certain Batmans that fit that goofy multiverse style, like that, you know, and obviously I think Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton, they fit that. Even George Clooney fits that. But Robert Pattinson, Christian Bale, no. Keep those in their own universe with the groundy and gritty style of those movies, and that's it. I do not want to see them come in through the multiverse. I don't want to see any of that shit. I think Christopher Nolan would have a heart attack if he saw Christian Bale's Batman showing up through some time portal in The Flash. So I'm very glad they didn't bother with that. Very happy. I think the next thing I want to talk about is just how this whole resetting of the DC universe actually works, because the movie obviously shows it at the end there. You know, it has reset essentially, and we could see that with George Clooney's Batman being the one that appears, and he's just like the normal Bruce Wayne. Like, that's, everyone knows he's Bruce Wayne, right? And my question is, and I hope this is the case, is that universe we see at the end of that movie, is that going to be the DCU we see going forward? And I hope it is, because that makes it feel more connected. And I've been saying this for a while because I feel like a lot of people are acting like this new DCEU, or not DCEU, this new DCU universe. Actually, that makes no sense because the U does stand for universe, so saying DCU universe wouldn't make any sense. It's just the DCU, the new universe for the DC. A lot of people are acting like it's starting from scratch. It's going to be completely new, completely separate franchise, and you're not going to consider any of these other movies as canon. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, the fact that this movie is set to like reset it, that's essentially what it did at the end there, that tells me that they're not trying to forget about everything that happened before. They're also likely going to keep a lot of the stuff that already existed in the DCEU, like Peacemaker. We know Peacemaker's returning with the season 2. We know Harley Quinn's definitely going to still be Margot Robbie going forward. There's been rumors of Ezra Miller returning as the Flash. You know, even you got Aquaman 2 still hasn't come out yet, like, and that's presumably probably going to be a part of this universe. So I think this whole Flashpoint thing, this whole resetting the universe, the whole point of it was to kind of allow them to have a fresh slate, to keep what they want, but to remove what they don't. And that's essentially what they're doing. So Ben Affleck's not returning as Batman, right? Which again is unfortunate. I kind of wish he was. But so they'll throw in George Clooney instead. Now, that's the thing that a lot of people are questioning about that. They're like, wait, why is, George Clooney here? Does that mean he's going to be the Batman in Batman Brave and the Bold? Which I think it's possible, but at the same time, I don't think, and a lot of people are saying the same thing, I don't think that Bruce Wayne is going to be playing Batman in Batman Brave and the Bold, which is slightly unfortunate because that means in this DCU, Bruce Wayne is not going to be like a big part of the movies. If he's already, George Clooney's age, a lot older, right? He's not going to continue as the main Batman. A lot of people have played Batman that aren't Bruce Wayne within the comics. So it's very possible that it won't be Bruce Wayne playing Batman in Batman Brave and the Bold. So it wouldn't be George Clooney, it would be someone else. And he could just be there as another character maybe. So that's entirely possible. And then of course you have Aquaman there as well. And we know Aquaman 2 is coming out. So I really do feel like this whole reset works in that way. You'll introduce the new Superman and stuff. You'll introduce all the new characters that they're trying to use in the future movies. And I think it works. And whether or not they recast Ezra Miller, I don't think really matters because they could still keep this version of the Flash canon. If they want to recast, they'll just recast the same character, but it's still going to be this version of Barry Allen. Or of course, there's other people who have been the Flash as well. Like you don't have to have just Barry Allen as the Flash, just like they did with Spider-Man. It doesn't have to be just Peter Parker. So you could do a bunch of different things with it. They have kind of like an open slate to do literally whatever they want. And I think this resetting was a good way to do that because they can pick and choose the things they want to keep. Now, I do wish they kept a lot more than what they are planning to keep. Obviously, I want Henry Cavill as Superman, but they want a younger Superman. So be it. Hopefully it's a good casting. I've seen some of the rumors for the casting and most of them seem like pretty good choices. And to finish off this video, I want to just go over a bunch of moments in the movie that I really loved, just to kind of like point them out because obviously I couldn't talk about that in my spoiler-free review because I don't want to get too specific with things. But I would say some of my favorite moments were, okay, so first of all, the whole sequence with the babies falling out of the building, I thought was hilariously like ridiculous, but like kind of worked at the same time. Like the babies did look really ridiculous being CGI babies, but what are you gonna do? You're not gonna throw real babies in the air. So I mean, they had to do something with that. But I thought the scene was just so ridiculous that it worked for me. I don't know. A lot of people I saw were clowning it on Twitter, but I liked it. I thought it was funny. Thankfully he caught all the babies properly, obviously. Literally anything with Ben Affleck in that first act with him just taking on those criminals was just absolutely amazing, especially with his Batmobile and just using the little like shield things to block bullets. That was such cool shit. And then he like goes through the fire, flies out of it like Batman. And there's a couple of those shots in the trailer, but every single one of those shots I was just like, whoa, that is fucking cool. And again, just further proves my whole point about really missing Ben Affleck as Batman, because I think they could definitely use more of him, but we're not going to see him again, unfortunately. And then the second Barry comes across his younger self, like that whole dynamic there for pretty much the entire second act was amazing. And him trying to teach the younger versions of Barry his powers and such and how they work, and he had to like make sure he gets the powers and all of that. There was a lot of conveniences in there as well, but I thought they were hilarious and I thought they worked for me. And I thought, especially when you got to some serious moments where he really showed strong envy towards him, I thought those worked a lot as well. And then you got introduced, their version of Bruce Wayne in that universe. And that was one of the coolest things about this movie, is that most of it does take place in this other universe and not within their own universe. So you get to see how different things are. And it's not that different. It's not like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness where they have like pizza balls and stuff and the world is completely different. No, this is not that different of a universe. It's just like their own, but there's just certain people that don't exist or are different. And I thought it was really cool how they introduce, Batman into this, where they're like, oh yeah, Batman exists here. And they find out it's not Ben Affleck as Batman. It's of course Michael Keaton. And all of that was great. The introduction of the themes from, Danny Elfman's themes that were played predominantly throughout this movie with Michael Keaton's Batman. Rescuing Kara was amazing as well. I actually really thought those scenes were solid. you really got a lot of, you know, Batman time there, just letting him take out all the guys and stuff. And he did it in some very badass ways, especially in that one scene in the bottom of that like prison type place in Russia. And then we got to see Kara use her abilities outside of there. And honestly, when they first show those scenes in the trailer, for some reason, I always mix that up with being the same location as where the final battle takes place. So I always assumed the final battle was going to also include the stuff in Russia. But then I, for some reason, didn't realize they're completely different environments. One's in a desert, the other one's in the snowy, you know, mountains. So I don't know why I mixed those locations up, but it was cool to have, you know, those really big action sequences in completely different areas in the world. And then the actual final battle itself, like I said, I was disappointed with them not showing more of Zod, but the fight scenes against Zod were pretty cool. You really got to see how powerful he was, especially how he was honestly taking out Kara like a lot. He kept stabbing her a bunch and killed her like 3 times on screen. I will say I couldn't mention this in my criticism for, you know, the spoiler-free review, but I absolutely hated how quickly Batman gave up there. He was just like, well, this seems like it's we can't fix this, so I'm just gonna crash this plane into the freaking giant thing. Like, yeah, he's a hero. I'm sure he would sacrifice himself, but I don't think he'd sacrifice himself so nonchalantly and just be like, yeah, let me just do this real quick. And it had a freaking shield on it. Like, I'm sure he would have known that it had a shield on it. He would have been smart enough to notice that, or he just wouldn't have done it in such a simple way. And then like when they go back in time and he's like, oh no, there's a shield on it, he's like, oh, roger that, I won't crash into it anymore. It's just like so fun. It's ridiculously stupid. I don't know, that was like one of my biggest criticisms with that final battle, that I was just like, what? But whatever, regardless, it was a great battle for the most part that I really had fun watching. And I saw people, you know, harping on the CGI. I thought it looked fine. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I just am too easy to please. I think it really just depends. If you go into this movie expecting bad CGI, you're probably going to notice tiny flaws that the average person is not going to notice nor care about. And I think that's actually important. And there's certain times where CGI does ruin a movie for me. Like, it's happened before, or not ruin the whole movie, but ruin certain aspects of it. But this was just not one of those cases. I don't know. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was just really good in other aspects, so I just didn't care. But didn't really ruin anything for me. And then everything with Dark Flash, which they had in sort of that little like flashpoint part at the very end of the movie, I thought was a cool concept. It was a little disappointing because everyone was hyping up like, oh my god, we're gonna get Reverse Flash in this movie. But no, we didn't get Reverse Flash. We just got this completely different thing called Dark Flash. And like I said, it was an interesting concept, like this guy, this version of Barry who's been out there for so long trying to save his mother. And now he has to kill this other version of Barry because this version of Barry has realized that he can't, you know, he can't save his mother. And so he has to kind of come to terms with that and defeat the Dark Flash, which actually the only reason he's able to defeat the Dark Flash is because the other version of Barry, I know there's a million versions of Barry in this, the other version of Barry jumps in front of him and gets stabbed, and then that causes the Dark Flash to die along with him. So he's able to go back and, you know, not kill his mother, but like make sure his mother isn't saved, because he knows all these problems will happen if he does do that. And it's a little funky how the time travel physics work in this, or not time travel, but like multiverse, everything, like all that. It's a little funky how they work. I think Endgame is still the best example of time travel to me, because it makes the most sense, where you can't have the whole like time paradox thing. But this version to me was like, it kind of had those elements of Endgame where like changing the past could also change the further past and the future. It won't just change the future, but it doesn't have the same like different timelines are created as you time travel. Like that's how it was in Endgame. Like if you go back in time, you're not going back in time to your own world. You're going back in time to a whole nother, you split the world at that point. If you change anything when you go back, it's automatically splitting the world. And now the other world exists in its own other little place, but that version of the world was not changed. That makes the most sense to me and doesn't have this convolutedness to it, this messiness to it. But this version kind of had that, because it was like, well, he killed his past self, but like somehow that didn't like cause some sort of a paradox, because if he killed his past self and he never existed because of that, like It's just a little weird. It's finicky, and I don't think they do the best job of explaining it, but also at the same time, I wasn't really harping on it while I was watching it. It was just something that I thought about later. It doesn't really ruin your movie going experience, but it might make you kind of like second guess yourself when you rewatch it in the future. That is all I have to say for this spoiler review of The Flash. Let me know your guys' thoughts of the movie in the comments, because of course I'm assuming you all have already seen the movie, and let me know your thoughts on all these spoilers as well, like just all sorts of spoilers. Just go crazy at it in the comments. So I will see you all on the next one. Peace out.